This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world, West Alabama. How we doing today? This is The Joe Gaither Show on a Saturday. We're not going to be talking about Alabama today very much at all, but we're going to be heading out to to expand our coverage on the Walsh Writing Network. We've been doing that this week, so we appreciate everybody who's jumping in and joining us. You can always find us on the social media machines at Joe Gaither 6 on whatever your social media favorite social media machine is, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, whatever you like. You can always find the show on the Bama Central YouTube channel, on my Facebook or Twitter. And you can always listen to the show if you'd like on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon. We appreciate everybody who's jumped in, subscribed, rated, and reviewed the show as we expand our coverage a little bit on the Walsh Writing Network. Today, we're going to go, 90 minutes, a little bit to the west of us here in Tuscaloosa, and we are going to find out about Mississippi State. We talked on Monday with our friend Austin Bidwell inside the Kansas City Royals. We talked on Thursday with our friend Matt Guzman about the San Antonio Spurs. On Saturday, for today, we're going to talk about Mississippi State. And we're going to have a lot of fun doing it with our friend Jacob Bain. You guys follow him on the Twitter machine at Jacob Bain 10. You can always follow CowbellCorner for all the state coverage. It's been a really probably, I'll ask Jacob to comment, but a good week for Mississippi State. Obviously, a lot of the focus was on the SEC baseball tournament, so that's where we're going to have most of our focus today. Mississippi State baseball 2021 national champions, but it's been a minute since that time. Jacob, thanks so much for giving us your time today. How you doing today on a Saturday?
I'm doing good, man. How are you doing?
Having a great day so far. Hopefully your Memorial Day weekend goes well, and hopefully all our audience enjoys Memorial Day weekend. Jacob, we texted on Monday, oh man, this might be a short week for Alabama and Mississippi State up in Hoover at the SEC tournament. It was for Alabama, one and done. But Mississippi State made quite a bit of noise, beating Ole Miss, beating Texas A&M, and obviously, they were eliminated last night by Tennessee, losing to Vanderbilt and Tennessee. But what'd you think of the performance up there in Hoover?
I thought they played. I played well. Got a couple good wins. I think when we texted, I might have mentioned. Yeah, I mentioned it'd be a short week for State, but They beat Ole Miss on Tuesday, and they moved their Cal Stevens, Durangelo, their weekend guys up a day, which I didn't expect them to do. But they beat Texas. They needed a couple wins to feel good about hosting, and they beat Ole Miss, and they beat the number one team in the RPI, Texas A&M, and then they almost beat Tennessee last night, but they blew a lead, but. It was impressive. They came back down. I think they were down 3-0 at one point, and it was a good week. They didn't play particularly well sometimes, but they got a couple wins, and that's really what they needed to do.
All right, so to put me inside the State kind of family on Tuesday night. Tuesday night, the game's getting deep. Ole Miss is up 1-0. It's getting late, and then Connor Hushak steps up to the plate and becomes the hero and walks it off. How big of a win is that? Mississippi State walking it off against Ole Miss, eliminating Ole Miss from the SEC tournament and winning 2-1.
It was huge. It was State needed that win to feel good about hosting, and they got a really good pitching performance from Brooks Auger. He went 7 innings. Not 7. He went 8 innings, had 13 strikeouts, and only threw 78 pitches. And I've never seen it before. He threw 12 balls the entire outing, but had 13 strikeouts. So more strikeouts than he had balls thrown. So that was a great performance, and it was almost wasted. But Connor Hushak hit a walk-off home run and had a big hits in the next couple games too.
Well, Hushak has been, looks like the Mississippi State power man. He's leading the team in batting average at 350. Just tell us what he's meant to the team. Obviously, that was a huge that was a huge moment. He's third on the team in home runs behind Hunter Hines and Dakota Jordan. But what's he meant to the team, and what's that moment going to mean for him?
He means a lot to this team, especially in this tournament. Dakota Jordan, Hunter Hines, they struggled bad. I never thought that they would play this bad and State would win games. They had combined one hit the entire week in Hoover, but Husak's been State's best hitter in conference play. He missed the last couple of weeks before the SEC tournament, but I think I saw yesterday he's batting like 385 in conference only games, and he missed the past couple of weeks against Missouri and Arkansas, and but he made impact, and I don't know if State didn't win any games in Hoover if it's not for Connor Isaac.
So Mississippi State earned what, the 4th seed for the SEC tournament, but it was kind of a roller coaster of a season. I've got a couple friends who follow Mississippi State, and they were complaining to me at the very beginning of the year, but it really came along late. Obviously, right here in Tuscaloosa, our focus was on that third to last series of the season where Alabama went over to Starkville and lost 2 out of 3. Yeah, Alabama had some health issues, but no, Mississippi State put it together this season. Tell us what you think about Chris Lemonis. I think there was a lot of some noise about, has he fallen off since the national championship season, and what's his job status going to be? What do you think of the job that Chris Lemonis did in his 6th year at Mississippi State?
Yeah, there was a lot of controversy, I guess you would say, surrounded by him because they did struggle the 2 years after the national championship, and going into the season, they didn't have the most impressive roster, and they started off real slow. But I mean, if I had to give him a grade for the season, it'd have to be an A, B plus A, because I mean he's turned his team around. If you'd have told me that they would have a chance to host in March, I wouldn't have believed you. I mean, they lose. They start off 3-3, lose a 2-game set against Austin Peay, get swept, and but it's incredible. But their pitching coach Justin Parker has a lot to do that. State was either next to last or dead last in team ERA last year in the SEC, and I think this year they're 3rd or 4th. They struggled last year on defense. I think they lead the SEC in total defense, like field 983 or something like that. So, yeah, it's been impressive. There's still some work. He would tell you that too. There's still work to do in the postseason, but it's been impressive the turnaround he's had so far with his team.
All right, so let's talk about kind of the future. Obviously, Alabama and Mississippi State are out on the SEC tournament. You're looking at Saturday games that are getting started right now. South Carolina and LSU, Tennessee and Vanderbilt are the last 4 teams remaining. All right, great. I think that sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on these conference tournaments, but really, I think a lot of the selection committee has a lot of their selection already done before this conference tournament. What's it really looking like for Mississippi State in the postseason? Because I'm seeing Division I baseball, D1 baseball has Mississippi State, even after their strong week, as a number 2 seed in the Indiana State Regional. Baseball America has them as the number 2 seed in the Oregon State Regional. And so, okay, you won 2 games in Hoover. You're obviously going to be in the NCAA tournament. That's not a question at all. But what's it going to take to maybe squeeze them into that number 1 seed, the 16th overall seed, and maybe hosting a Duty Noble Field?
I'm not sure what it would take at this point. I think Indiana State and East Carolina have both lost a game in their conference tournament, but they're still in it. Last I checked, East Carolina beat Wichita State today. Indiana State's playing Evansville, I think, right now. But I think the state's made a strong case whether or not these guys win the tournament or not. It will just come up to the committee. D1 baseball and Baseball America has them as 2 seeds, but I just have a hard time thinking they'd leave State out because, I mean, their RPI is at 25, which is lower than East Carolina, which is at 19. But State has 20 quad 1 and quad 2 wins compared to East Carolina, who only has 11. So, and a strength of schedule of 14 for State, and East Carolina's got a strength of schedule of 74. So, if they win their conference tournament, then it would be close. But if they lose in their conference tournament, East Carolina or Indiana State, I think State can slide in their spot easy.
Let's talk about the North Alabama game, the last non-conference game, the last midweek game. I'm reading that there was controversy or maybe a school of thought that said maybe Mississippi State would have been better off canceling that game to help the RPI. You look through the schedule. I mean, they won 8-4. Okay, great. You won 8-4, but North Alabama, not really a strong program. How does that last midweek game against North Alabama? I mean, is it really that important? I'm a baseball outsider. I like baseball, but I'm not really plugged into the ins and outs of RPI and that sort of thing. But preparing for our talk today, I'm reading that, maybe if Mississippi State had canceled that game on North Alabama, that their RPI would be higher and they'd be in a much better spot to host a regional.
I think it was reported I think it was by D1 Baseball that the NCAA selection committee sent out a memorandum kind of just basically saying, don't cancel midweek games for RPI purposes or anything like that. And so State didn't cancel it and they played and I think they dropped in the RPI, but if I'm being completely honest,
after a win, what?
After a win, I'm being completely honest. I don't really understand how the RPI works.
Sure.
State dropped from 22 to 25 last night after losing to the number 1 seed Tennessee, but Indiana State lost to a team in their tournament it's in the 1/6 in RPI, and they don't drop any spots. So I don't. And East Carolina the same way. They dropped 1 spot after losing to Rice, who is in the triple digits in the RPI. So I'm not exactly sure how the RPI works, but it's been a struggle for State to move up in the RPI despite beating the number one team in the RPI, Texas A&M, a couple of days ago.
All right, so I'm just scrolling through D1 Baseball and Baseball America. I see Tennessee, I see Kentucky, I see A&M 3, Arkansas is 4. I'm just counting now, and Georgia is 5. 5 SEC teams are projected to host by Division I baseball. Let's put our conspiracy hat on. Do we think that maybe the selection committee might say, okay, 5 is enough. We can't have another SEC team hosting. We can't go to 6, 7, 8 teams hosting. Because look, the SEC it is the most difficult conference in baseball, and SEC baseball might be the most challenging league in all of college sports. Is there any sort of, we got to spread this around and make it fair and equitable to everybody in the country? So maybe Mississippi State gets a short end of the stick.
That could be the case, but I think that could be the case, but I wouldn't understand. The SEC's had more than 5 hosts before in the past, and Georgia has been kind of a lock to host, which they should be. Their RPI is, like you said, 5, but they had the same conference record as State. Finished behind State actually in the standings. They finished 6th, State finished 5th, and State took a series from Georgia earlier in April. But if Georgia deserves the host over Mississippi State, I'm not going to argue that they don't. But I feel like it's hard for them to put Texas A&M as possibly a national seed, a top 8 national seed, and leave State out completely. I could see them trying to avoid multiple SEC teams, but I think when they look at it and they realize Dewey Noble Field will probably have 12 to 15,000 fans, and Indiana State might have 2,500. I think they'll take that into consideration whenever they select host sites.
We're talking to Jacob Bain right here on the Joe Gaither Show. He covers Mississippi State, all Mississippi State athletics for CowbellCorner, part of our Walsh family and Walsh Writing Network. You can follow Jacob Bain at Jacob Bain 10 on Twitter if you'd like. Jacob, let's talk about the regional then. Let's assume that they're going to be a 2 seed just because that's what D1 Baseball and Baseball America have as of their writing this morning. So assuming that, if you're going to Indiana State, let's see, if you're going to Indiana State and you're paired up with Indiana and Western Michigan, how's Mississippi State going? to me, the outsider, I see, Mississippi State's going to be the 2 seed in that region that you do not want to see, and they're going to get out of that region and get to the super regionals. How do you feel about what State has done this week in Hoover and how it can carry over into a regional, whether they're playing on the road at Indiana State or on the road at Oregon State or even hosting as the number 1 seed? How do you think the momentum that State has really seemed to build will carry over into regionals?
It'll help them. I feel good about State. If they match up with Indiana, that'd be interesting because Chris Lemonis was the head coach of Indiana before he was at State. But I like them in a regional mainly because they have 2 really good frontline starters, Cal Steven and Durangelo Sanja. Cal was first team All SEC, so I feel good about them in a regional, whether they host or not. But if they get into a loser's bracket, it'd be a little interesting because they've got 3 solid starters in Pika, Khan, Cal, and Durangelo, but the pitching depth is not really there for State much. They have about 3 or 4 reliable bullpen arms, and after that, it's kind of up in the air. But I feel confident they can get out of a regional, but nothing would shock me with this team. If they make it to Omaha, it wouldn't shock me. If they lose 2 in a regional, it wouldn't shock me.
So would you assess, based on where we are in the season, right here on the precipice of the postseason, of the real postseason, would you assess that maybe some of the preseason noise around Chris Lemonis has quelled and been quieted, and he's pretty much, okay, everything's all good under Lemonis?
Oh, yeah, I think everything's fine with Lemonis. His job was really to get back into the postseason and maybe, secure them in the postseason, which he is. So I think he's fine. Next year will be a big rebuild for him, but I think he could. He's done a good job this year, and I think he's safe in terms of job security or stuff like that after this year because they made the postseason pretty safely.
All right, so a lot of our sports fans may not be into college baseball, and that's okay. When they hear the name Mississippi State, they think about, okay, football, maybe bottom end of the conference, this, that, and the other. What does baseball really mean to Mississippi State? Obviously, the 2021 national championship is the first team national championship in university history, and there have been many renovations to Dudy Noble Field. You just referenced 12 to 15,000, and every time I hear people going over there, they're like, "Oh man, the atmosphere! It's so cool, it's great." What does baseball really mean to Mississippi State?
It means a lot. Now that's not to say football and men's and women's basketball don't mean a lot, but baseball it's a pressure filled job, and for the players it's pressure filled because the fans expect to win, and there's going to be a lot of people there, and I think State having as much success as they have, even before they won the national championship, they were always in the hosting discussion in Omaha, always have a chance to win the national title. So I think the fan support, it starts from that, and it starts from State having success, and it just passes on from generation to generation. And I think the fans could have an impact in the selection. Like I said, I think it would be enticing the selection committee to send the regional to Starkville because they understand that there will be at least 12,000 people there at every game for the regional.
Well, you're kind of hitting on something I talked about last week when Alabama was selected for a regional site for softball. I wondered if Alabama's, 3,500 seat stadium, one of the second largest on-campus softball facility. I wondered if that gave Alabama maybe the nod, basically pushed them over the edge to get them into the 14 seeding and hosting. My friend Katie Wyndham said maybe not. Obviously, the RPI was a factor, but in my brain, I wonder if the NCAA wants it to look good on TV, and that's why they selected Alabama just a little bit. Now, obviously, Alabama having a pretty good time making it to the Super Regionals in softball. Mississippi State had a real good softball year, and we're not going to talk about softball that much, but finished 6th in the conference, had the best finish under Samantha Ricketts in the conference, making it to an NCAA regional, losing in the Stanford regional. But I wonder if the NCAA takes those things into factor. Like, okay, we're going to have this Mississippi State baseball game on SEC Plus or on SEC Network, on ESPN. We want it to look good on TV.
Yeah, I mean, nobody. I mean, I'm sure Indiana State and East Carolina fans don't want to hear it, but I mean, it has to be taken into account that State's got arguably the nicest facilities in college baseball. So, I think the selection committee understands that they want fans to look at a full stadium and a huge full stadium as opposed to Indiana State, which nothing wrong. They're a smaller school, but I mean 2,500 compared to 15,000 is a pretty big difference.
Absolutely. We've been talking to Jacob Bain, and you're going to be able to follow his coverage on Cowbell Corner on Selection Monday to find out exactly where Mississippi State goes, if they're going to be hosting a regional or if they're going to be heading out to Oregon State or Indiana State or somewhere else. Well, you'll be able to follow him on Cowbell Corner for Selection Monday. It's been an interesting spring for Mississippi State. I don't want to leave the conversation before we talk about Jeff Lebby and football. We'll get into our football preview with Jacob Bain probably next week and get deeper into it. But what have you felt about, or what's been your early impressions about Jeff Lebby? I really, really, really did not like the previous coach. His name's escaping me, the one-year coach.
Zach
Arnett, thank you, Zach Arnett. I thought he was in over his head. I've said that many times. I felt like he was kind of a little bit arrogant and just in over his head. What do you felt? What have you thought about Jeff Lebby through the early part of the spring?
Yeah, the media wasn't able to watch practice a ton, so we didn't see much on that respect, but. And the spring game was impressive. Blake Chapin, he threw for over 300 yards, had only 3 or 4 incompletions. But I think the thing that's impressed me most is his transfer portal recruiting. And you mentioned in Arnett and under previous staff, I feel like they were content with the roster they had. I think Lebby has more of a Lane Kiffin approach to things where – if there's another talented quarterback in the portal, even though we might not necessarily need him, he's going to go out there and try to get him. Just keep stacking talent on the roster, which I think he's done in the transfer portal. Because they signed Devon Booth out of the transfer portal running back a few weeks ago, and State didn't necessarily just need a running back per se, but Devon Booth elevates your offense in year one under Jeff Lebby. But I've been impressed with Lebby. He's done well recruiting, and in the spring game, the offense looked exciting, which is something that State fans really want to see. It's an exciting offense because last year it was brutal sometimes to watch. But I think State fans are excited to see an offense. The defense, we'll have to see. Coleman Hustler from Alabama, first time full-time defense coordinator, but. They've got some talent on the side of the ball. They're young and not very experienced, and they didn't do as well in the transfer portal as the offense did. But I think they could be decent, but it would probably be wise to have low expectations. But I've said this before: State's rarely had just really bad defenses, so maybe that could certainly change this year. But I think it won't be as bad as people expect. But I wouldn't expect it to be great or anything like that.
Now, are we returning to the Mike Leach air raid under Jeff Lebby, or is it going to be a third offense in 3 years for this Mississippi State team?
I think it'll be. Sort of kind of like what Lane runs at Ole Miss, but I think it'll be more like what Josh Heupel runs at Tennessee. Spread out the defense. Wide splits with the receiver. I think he'll throw the ball more than Lane does, but I think he'll run with that same tempo as Lane does. And but I think it'll be a mixture between what Lane does at Ole Miss and what Heupel does at Tennessee, which he's worked under both guys.
I think you mix both those schemes together. I think that can create problems for SEC defensive coordinators. What's the excitement level around the fan base for this upcoming season? You obviously outlined maybe the expectations shouldn't be that high first year, but is the excitement level high?
I would say so. I would say the fans are excited, especially with the portal. They've picked up a lot of new players, but I think this the state program just needs stability. I mean,
Yes.
since 2018, they've had Moorhead, Leach, Arnett. So they've had 3 coaches since 2018. I think they just need somebody to come in and kind of provide some stability, because you could see early on in both the Moorhead and the Arnett era that it wasn't going to go well. So I think they start off with 3 non-conference games. If they could start off 3-0, I think fans would really be excited going into the first SEC game, which I think is against Florida.
Well, Jacob, we're going to have you back on probably next week because I need to start breaking down some of these SEC schedules and kind of predicting wins and losses. So tell everybody what you're working on with Cowbell Corner. Maybe tell everybody what was a favorite baseball story that you wrote about on Cowbell Corner that they need to go read, and we'll schedule something next week to get deeper into football.
I'm not sure if I have a favorite one. I think I wrote a column after the Georgia game, after that kind of controversial game too. I think it did pretty well. I guess that's one of my favorite ones. But
they had a big fight, right?
Oh yeah, well, if you can call it a fight, they emptied the
baseball fight.
Yeah, they emptied the dugouts, but it led to probably, I think, a dozen ejections for state, which it was ridiculous. They had Georgia didn't have players ejected because their players were wearing hoodies, so they couldn't see their number, and state players were thrown off for leaving the field, and they were already on the field whenever it happened. So it was really it was not a good situation. But I wrote a column after that. I think the title was something like controversial loss revealed state's character or something, because they were, it was a tough way to lose game 2, but they came back in game 3 and overcame a 5-0 deficit to take the series from Georgia.
Well, we're going to be looking for your coverage on Monday, Cowbell Corner Selection Monday. We'll find out if Mississippi State is hosting or is going on the road. It was a good week in Hoover for the program. Always good to beat the Rebels. One last question. People don't understand. I think, maybe I'm wrong. I don't think people understand that Mississippi State-Ole Miss rivalry. Well, can you sum it up in 2 sentences? Because goodness gracious, people always talk about Alabama-Auburn. Oh, it's the biggest rivalry. And it is a great rivalry, absolutely. But I think State and Ole Miss is one of the best rivalries in the entire conference.
Yeah, I would say the best 2 rivalries are the in-state rivalries. Always, I feel like have a little more juice to me. So I feel like Alabama-Auburn and State Ole Miss is kind of the top 2. I think the best way to summarize the State and Ole Miss one is 2 teams could be 2 State and Ole Miss, not traditional football powers, but they could both be 4-7 going in the Egg Bowl. But if they win the Egg Bowl and finish 5-7, both fan bases are happy with that one.
Thanks so much for your time joining us today, Jacob. We appreciate you jumping in to the Joe Gaither Show, expanding our coverage on the Walsh Writing Network. We need to catch up with you next week, and we'll dive into 2024 Mississippi State football expectations.
Yes, sir. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. That's Jacob Bain joining us. We appreciate his time. We appreciate you, the audience, giving us a little bit of patience and spreading your wings with us. We covered a lot of Alabama topics this week, and we covered a lot of Major League Baseball, basketball, and Mississippi State as well. Next week, we're going to catch up with our friend Joey Van Zimmeren. He writes for Mizzou Central. We're going to talk about Missouri football and their kind of future, what their outlook is, and we're going to kind of get into 2024. We'll break down all 16 SEC schedules in the next week or two. That's going to do it for our Saturday edition, nice and short for you on a Saturday. We hope that you guys have a very good Memorial Day weekend. Remember the reason for Memorial Day. I hope you guys are able to thank a veteran for their sacrifice and for their time, basically giving up themselves for your country. You can always follow the program at Joe Gaither 6 on whatever the social media machine that you like. Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, whatever you like. I'm on all the social medias at Joe Gaither 6. You can find the program on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or Amazon. We appreciate everybody who has downloaded, rated, reviewed, subscribed to the show. We appreciate everybody who's joined us today on a Saturday, and we'll be back on Monday with a fresh edition of the Joe Gaither Show right here on Bama Central and BamaCentral.com.